All right. So we only have a few more weeks to this class. We don't meet over Thanksgiving, and we only have 1 week after Thanksgiving. But it matches up with our number of chapters, at least in The Body Keeps the Score. And I think I think we'll do pretty well at wrapping this up at the same time we finish this book. And I think that I think we're on schedule. Um, the so tonight we're gonna talk about yoga. Um, and first, I kind of want to give you my own thoughts on it. I gave you some stories already, um, but so I think there's a lot of um, different thoughts about yoga, but if we break it down to the basics, uh, there's three components to any kind of yoga that we do. There's, of course, the physical one, and that's what most people tune into. They might join a yoga class um, for the physical aspect of it. Uh, so, but the three main aspects are the first aspect is breathing. The second aspect is mindfulness. And the third aspect is physical. And it's really the integration of these three components that makes it a comprehensive exercise. Some people add a spiritual component, a lot of people don't. There's a lot of different things that people can branch off into with yoga. So, for instance, tonight my wife is teaching a special yoga class where they combine, it's called sound bathing, but it's really about vibrations. So, she's got a guy bringing in all of these different kinds of meditation bowls. Most of the time they're like brass or copper, and if you take a special kind of rod and go around the rim, it'll make a sound for an extended period of time. But he's got, hundreds of them, crystal, all different kinds of metal. But as they're doing this yoga class, they're also experiencing physical vibrations through sound. The other things that the book has talked about, I forget what the holiday was 2 weeks ago, but it was kind of about the end of harvest and the beginning of winter. And we had a drumming circle in our backyard with a with a bonfire and everything. We just drive our neighbors crazy, basically. And you know, normal things like solstice or equinox or things like that. And then people ask my wife, well, your husband's a minister. What's he doing while you're having all these celebrations? And she's like, well, he's probably grilling burgers and hot dogs. And so, but it is interesting that the book is talking about all of these things. And each one has these multiple components as part of it. So the first time I went to a yoga class, I walked in it was in the rec hall of a Catholic church, and there was a woman who was elderly leading the class, and they were all sitting there breathing and chanting the sound or word Om. And this is from ancient Sanskrit, and this is where yoga actually began. And so Om can mean a number of things. It could have a spiritual side to it, or it can simply mean yes. And it's the yes part that is the interesting psychological component. So what are we saying yes to? We're basically opening ourselves up to the now, the present moment. And what that does is it does the same thing as kind of a opening to mindfulness or meditation. It brings us cognitively and emotionally into the present. So as we move through the different parts to a basic yoga practice, it gradually moves through these different components until all three components are integrated. So the first thing everybody does is basically something to relax. So everybody sits in a pose and we begin to breathe. So breathing is always the first component. And even if you read this chapter in the book, when he describes the case where he's seeing a client and she seems so physically stressed that she may panic because she's in this fight or flight moment. The first thing he does is just breathe. And you can enhance breathing by raising your arms and lowering them. That actually opens the diaphragm, so you can have better diaphragmatic breathing depending on the position of your arms, because it actually moves your rib cage and allows for more room to breathe. And so there are different things you can do with breathing. But one of the things that caught me in this chapter was what the client wrote at the end. If I'm breathing, if I'm focusing on breathing, I'm not in the past and I'm not in the future. We can't breathe in the past and we can't breathe in the future. We can only breathe now. And so it's a physical way of drawing us into the present while at the same time regulating our heartbeat and helping us to relax, bringing more oxygen into our bloodstream. All of these things basically reduce stress and anxiety. They also add other components of our cognition. So it's not just about breathing to bring in oxygen. If we're only thinking about breathing and how we breathe and how that breathing feels, I feel my diaphragm filling and my lungs filling. I feel the air leaving through my nostrils, entering through my mouth. And, they even write about how breathing in through our mouths can raise our heartbeats, breathing out through our nose can lower our heart rate. And then they talk about how the heart rate should be variable, matching our breathing. But if we're panicked, if you've ever been panicked in some way, like maybe you were almost in an accident or something like that, you'll notice that your breathing is very shallow and you're not breathing deeply. And if your breathing is very shallow, it means that you're not going to have a variable heartbeat either. So you have to have deeper breathing to exaggerate the heartbeat so that it can match the breathing. One of the things that they noticed with people who were in the military who come back from deployment is that when they feel threatened, even if they're not, when they are in that fight or flight response, often their heartbeat races and then it goes down very low. But if that happens multiple times, it can actually create defibrillation and an irregular heartbeat. So one of the things that is the most popular medication for soldiers or the military that have PTSD and notice this heart racing and then decrease, and that also affects emotion. And so they usually prescribe a beta blocker rather than an SSRI or an SNRI or other things, because a beta blocker helps to normalize the heartbeat, and it prevents those spikes in heart racing. And so the heartbeat's not as dramatic. I think one of the most popular beta blockers is like propranolol, and there's other generic names for it. One of the side effects is pretty good with beta blockers because it usually prevents heart attacks. And the reason it does that doesn't have anything to do with blood flow or anything like that. When anybody wakes up in the morning, they get an extra shot of adrenaline, which makes our hearts race faster, and it gets our bodies awake. Well, if we have heart issues or high blood pressure, that can actually result in a heart attack. But a beta blocker, if you take it the night before, it can often prevent a heart attack in the morning. Most heart attacks are either a result of a very stressful situation or they occur upon waking. So it's kind of an interesting side effect of that medication. But the first thing is breathing, and it seems like breathing is such an integral part of being, but it's such a natural part because we don't have to think to breathe, it's automatic, that we take it for granted, that we don't really notice it happening until we call attention to it. And so the first thing to do is to call attention and to be mindful of breathing, and then to begin to regulate our breathing and to be conscious of not only breathing in through our mouth, breathing out through our nose, but how does that not only make us feel to breathe deeply, but how does it feel to breathe? What does it feel like to inhale and to exhale? What does it sound like? Are there smells? I mean, are there tastes in the air? And how does it make our bodies feel? And so that's always the first step in any kind of yoga practice, is to center ourselves with our breathing, which is the first step of bringing us into the present moment. The second step is mindfulness. And that is usually done in the next step of breathing. It could be calling attention to various aspects of our physical bodies. How does it feel to just sit? You know, we've been going all day, we've been thinking about jobs and kids and other stressors. And, you know, how does it feel just to rest on the floor in a certain pose and to breathe? So calling our attention into the relaxation of the moment, the simply being present, not in the present, but present for ourselves, personal awareness of our own being. So what's going on with ourselves? The whole day we've been thinking about everybody else. We've been thinking about everything we have to do at work. We've been thinking about all the stressors in life. We rarely think about our own physical welfare unless something's wrong. And then we forget how nice it was to feel good. You know, we only remember feeling good when we feel bad. Like if we have the flu or something like that, or if we're hurt, you know, or something's wrong physically, only then do we think about, wow, it was really great to feel good. But we don't think about that when we're feeling good. It's just kind of assumed, taken for granted. And so it brings us into an appreciation of basically our own being. So between breathing and acknowledgement of our physical presence, it begins to help us identify with self-awareness. And self-awareness includes cognitive, spiritual, if you believe in something, presence, but also our physical bodies. So many times we're not in touch and we don't integrate these aspects. And then what takes up most of the time in yoga is various physical poses, which help different parts of our bodies. So, you know, it's not just stretching, but each pose affects a different part of our body differently. And it's usually done in equal parts. So if we have two parts of our body, then we alternate poses to address each part of our body. If it's a core part of our body, then we just do one central pose. The other things that can be incorporated that it really doesn't talk about too much are different types of sound, different types of smells, and there's a lot of history between why certain sounds are used and why certain smells are used, like why burn incense? Why does incense like frankincense smell the way it does? So there's a long history with all of these little nuances. But sound is considered vibration affecting our bodies and bringing us into the present in a different way. Whether you'll also notice that sometimes sound can come from outside of us, like ringing a bell or a bowl, and that affects us one way. Sound can also come from our own vocalization, so that's coming from within us. And it's an internal vibration. It's not coming from outside of us. And that literally resonates with us in a different way if we are making the sound. We can also make these sounds or listen to these sounds as part of a meditation process. Sometimes when people do yoga, meditation is either a larger or a smaller part of it. And meditation doesn't have to be complicated. You know, it could simply be sitting quietly, focusing on our breathing for an extended period of time. The trick is, it's very difficult to not think about other aspects of our lives. So what we're doing in meditation is we're training our minds to focus not only in the present, but on our bodies, on our breathing, on self-awareness. And so as people sit there and breathe, different things creep into their minds. Oh, I've got to make dinner after yoga. Oh, I got to stop at the store after yoga. Oh, I had an argument with my boss today. Oh, I don't know what to do with my kid because they're having trouble in school. All these things sneak into or creep into our minds, and we feel unsettled. And so as we notice something creeping into our minds, it's not complicated. All we have to do is simply acknowledge it and remind ourselves to go back to breathing, to refocus ourselves. And this becomes easier with time. The last thing is always, you know, the physical aspect of yoga. So I just want to go over some things that the book talks about as we move through this chapter. So when they talk about breathing, we also want, like I said, to acknowledge our physical selves. And so what that's doing is we're not thinking really about emotional feelings at that point. We're thinking about physical feelings. But we know people who have been traumatized often suppress the realization of those physical feelings, or what the book calls numbing ourselves, especially certain areas of our bodies that we link to specific traumas. So as we breathe, we want to acknowledge the physical feelings. Often they are suppressed. They talk about emotional freedom technique, or EFT, and I just want to mention some of these terms, like breathing with a focus on the out breath, which activates the relaxing parasympathetic nervous system. I also taught her to use her fingers to tap a sequence of acupressure points on various parts of her body, a practice often taught under the name EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, which has been shown to help patients stay within the window of tolerance and often has positive effects on PTSD. So they're just talking about various parts of the body known as acupressure points. The interesting thing I thought about numbing, it says they may become serially obese or anorexic or addicted to exercise or work. At least half of all traumatized people try to dull their intolerable inner world with drugs or alcohol. The flip side, of numbing is sensation seeking. Many people cut themselves to make the numbing go away, while others try to bungee jump or other high-risk activities like prostitution, gambling. Any of these methods can give them a false and paradoxical feeling of control. But it's all part of numbing real feelings, whether they're physical or emotional. Getting in touch with physical sensations. A lot of times, if people have a response to a situation, they might notice a tightness in their chest. They might notice somewhere they're going to hold their stress in their bodies somewhere. And that's why Fritz Perls and Gestalt always asked, where are you holding that stress in your body? When Perls would see somebody experiencing stress or anxiety, he would say, where are you feeling that in your body? And he wanted them to make a cognitive and emotional connection between the anxiety and stress and where it was occurring in their body, because normally that would have been numbed or repressed. So what this is doing is, if people are experiencing this stress in their bodies or tightness or discomfort, or it could turn into pain when they're experiencing stress or anxiety, if they've experienced trauma, this is often what they call a residue of the traumatic experience. And so they're stuck in the fight or flight response. It's never been resolved. And so it brings them right back to that traumatic experience, and they experience it not only emotionally, but physically as well. And so what this is doing is, once people are able to breathe and to be present, the next therapeutic step is for them, next time they experience stress or anxiety or panic, is simply to take notice of what they're feeling physically. Where is this appearing in their body? How are they holding this stress in their bodies? And to acknowledge it, but to also realize that this is residue from a past trauma. This is not happening to me in the present. Being able to make that distinction from a place of safety, calmness, and present is perhaps the first step into being able to bring that trauma and process it in the present to turn it into a different kind of memory. So we've talked a little bit about heartbeat regulation, but HRV stands for heart rate variability, and poor HRV, or a low heart rate variability, a lack of fluctuation in heart rate in response to breathing, not only has negative effects on thinking and feeling, but also on how the body responds to stress. And now they've linked a lot of different physical disorders to low heart rate variability. And they have some really nice charts. I know that now with modern technology like smartwatches, you can get all kinds of readouts about heart rate. And every now and then mine will beep and freak me out. And I'm thinking like something's wrong with me, but really it's like too loose on my wrist. You know, it thinks I'm dying. but I still haven't had the courage to sleep with my watch on yet. They did do some studies like yoga versus DBT, because DBT was known to help control one's emotional variability. But they really only saw good results from yoga compared to DBT. So it does say they have the names for them in the book. All yoga programs consist of a combination of breath practices, pranayama, stretches or postures, asanas, and meditation. They don't have the word for meditation. I don't know what it is. All right. And so one of the things I thought was neat is that it talked about how some yoga teachers would not say, okay, we're going to hold this pose for 30 seconds. Instead, they say we're going to hold this pose for 10 breaths. And so that keeps us in that mental realm of being focused on our breathing while we move through the physical poses. And so it adds a continuity to the experience of mindfulness throughout the process. And remember, if our minds begin to wander or we start thinking about something else, all we have to do is remind ourselves to refocus, to recenter ourselves. Some of the interesting thing after they did a 20-week study of people practicing yoga, this is some of the responses that they shared. My emotions feel more powerful. Maybe it's just that I can recognize them now. Or maybe I would add, we allow ourselves to recognize them because we're feeling safe again. I can express my feelings more because I can recognize them more. I feel them in my body, recognize them, and address them. I now see choices, multiple paths. I can decide and I can choose my life. It doesn't have to be repeated or be experienced like a child. I was able to move my body and be in my body in a safe place and without hurting myself or getting hurt. It does warn that some postures, some stances may be more triggering for people who have experienced trauma than others. More different poses may cause people to feel more vulnerable than other poses because of trauma. And one of the last things I'd like to focus on is I've learned this just as a therapist because when I was seeing a lot of children who had experienced abuse and trauma, I would worry about them because I cared about their welfare. And when you see, 6 or 7 kids a day, maybe more, and they've all shared horror stories with you, it was hard for me not to take that home with me. But I eventually learned that the process of what's called detachment allows us to both experience empathy with a client, but not to own their feelings. And so what that means is that most people think detachment is just like not feeling somebody empathically. But in reality, detachment is being as empathic as we can with a client, putting ourselves in their shoes, even when they're describing something traumatic, and fully experiencing that emotion, but allowing that emotion to pass through us and not holding on to it or owning it as our own. And so that's what really prevented me from experiencing burnout while still allowing me to be empathic with kids who had experienced trauma. So I would, be present for them, as empathic as I could. I would become emotional listening to their stories empathically, but I would allow those emotions to flow through me. I wouldn't hold on to them or own them, but I would recognize them for what they are, that other individuals experience. The empathy did a number of different things, even though it could be draining. It allowed me to better understand what the client was experiencing emotionally. And so it helped me to treat them more appropriately and therapeutically. But the other thing it did was that it brought out my own genuineness with the client, and the client knew that I cared and I was present for them because I was emotionally present as well. The problem is so many counselors go into this profession because they care and they're empathic people, but they hold on to all those feelings that they experience in the day, rather than allowing it to move through them and letting it go. And so I think that's really the cause of burnout. It's not seeing too many clients. It's not practicing for too long. I think it's really, being very empathic, but holding on to those emotions that belong to somebody else. And I think that's really the root of most burnout in counselors. So I think that's the way to deal with it, though. At least it helped me. All right, questions about this chapter? Yoga, any comments? Maybe some of you have more experience with yoga.
I like doing yoga for exercise because everything else is boring. So it kind of helps. And plus, it works your whole body. And I think that's important instead of just using machines or going to weight rooms. And although those are good too, but there's something about it that just kind of works on all levels. So it's one of my favorite things to do. I don't go to yoga class. I use CDs or DVDs on my.
It seems like a little more natural because any resistance is kind of, your own body resistance and gravity and everything.
Yeah, that you said it better than I could.
What else?
I was going to just add, I really enjoy Kundalini yoga because Kundalini yoga incorporates breath work. So it's yoga movement, but it's like heavy on breath work and I don't know, moving the energy, I guess. But I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Is that the one it really focuses on chakras and all right.
Yeah, it focuses on chakras and I've done Kundalini yoga that incorporated gongs and sound bowls and stuff like that too. But it's like it sounds like it would be peaceful and it is, but it's like a actual workout with like how much breathing you do. Like you're kind of surprised like how energized you feel afterwards because you don't take deep breaths like that often.
Yeah. Often we go through a whole day without getting enough oxygen in our bodies. Yeah. All right. So it's almost 8. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to come back at 8:10. That'll be a 15-minute break. And then I'm going to turn, we're here present. We're going to move some desks and sit around in a circle. And Lexi's going to lead us in some yoga, but I'm going to sit the computer down in front of Lexi so you can all do yoga at home. And nobody has to do yoga that doesn't want to. Maybe you have a physical disability or something like that, or you're just not comfortable, but you can just watch then. But yeah, that's what we're going to do for our exercise. So see you at 10 after 8. All right. So let's get this ball rolling. We're gonna try this out. You want, you can take off your shoes. I wore clean socks just for this. All right, where are you gonna sit? Where are you gonna be?
I'll sit here. Oh, my goodness. I'm gonna back up so everyone can see.
Am I the only one doing this?
Okay, you're looking at me. You guys are gonna come? Oh my goodness. I'm walking over there. Thanks.
You can.
That's fine. They look the same. No, but it's my phone and I was like,
Mine are not coffee dudes, but I was using them $2. So they look very good.
oh wow, this is.
So it's just.
Really?
It is.
Yeah.
It always is.
All right. Oh, sorry, guys. All right, guys. This is just going to be very, very basic stuff here, just some beginner stuff to warm us up. We'll start with about 3 minutes of some mindfulness and meditation. Get comfortable, whatever's comfortable for you. You can be sitting like this. If you'd like to lie on this lovely carpet, you can lie down.
It's pretty
In-
nasty.
People at home, however's comfortable. And then we'll move from there. Soften your gaze. Maybe shut the eyes. Check in with your breath. Release any expectations for practice.
Gently start bringing awareness back into your body. And if you're not already doing so, meet me in Sukhasana. That's seated with your legs crossed, being mindful of pulling your elbows down towards the ground, shoulders sitting up nice and straight. Opening the hips and pushing down, feeling that grounding energy. We're going to first start with waking up the neck, gently bringing tips of the earlobes to the tops of the shoulder. Maybe chin to chest, yes. Saying yes to new experiences. Shaking the head no. No to negative self-talk. Maybe taking a circle. Coming back to center. Next, I'd like you to bring your hands together, thumbs pressing on the sternum into our Anjali Mudra, prayer arms. And we're going to take some deep breaths in and sigh it out. Another deep breath in. Filling the lungs all the way to the bottom, maybe taking just one sip more. And then sighing it out. Really taking a chance to check in with your alignment. Head over heart, heart over pelvis. Gently clasp the hands together. Inhale the arms up. Feel that stretch in your back. And gently exhale them down. Hang up the chest. Again, we'll inhale the arms up. With that stretch. And gently open up the heart. Exhale. So we'll take our right hand to our left knee, our left fingertips behind the pelvis. And we're going to inhale and open our sternum as we twist. Inhale, maybe twist just a little bit more, being mindful of the body. Center. Left hand will go to the right knee, right fingertips will go behind your tailbone. Inhale and open up the sternum, twist. Next, we're going to bring our hands in front of us. We'll go into a tabletop position. I'll go sideways so you can see me. Making sure that the shoulders are in line with the wrists, hips are over the knees. Really pushing through the ground, feeling that connection go through the ground up into the upper body. Take a breath in. And exhale it out. We're going to move into our cat-cow, starting with our cow. Inhale, arch the back. Belly drops down. Head is nice and long. Tailbone is up towards the ceiling. And then as we exhale, tuck the pelvis in. Round the shoulders. Bring the navel back into the spine, pushing away from the ground. Inhale back into cow. Let the belly drop. Tailbone goes up, head and gaze is out in front of us. Now exhale, tuck the pelvis in, round the shoulders. Bring the navel up into the spine. We'll do one more inhale into cow. And exhale into your hand. Pushing the ground, feeling the grounding through the palms. And back into your tabletop. Pushing down on the tops of the feet, feeling the grounding up through the palms. We're going to now get our beginner yogi toes going. Flip the toes under. And we're going to connect our movement with our breath as we inhale. Sit back, stretching the toes. And then exhale back into the tabletop. Inhale as you send your pelvis back, sit. And exhale back into tabletop. Do it one more time. Inhale. Pelvis sinks back towards the heels. If you'd like a little extra stretch in the feet, you can gently bring your hands up onto your quads. Maybe roll the wrists a little bit. And back down into our tabletop. You can put the toes back under. Take a breath in. We're going to extend our right leg back. Inhale it back, put the ball of your feet in touch with the ground, and we're just going to wake up our calves and our hamstrings a little bit, playing with what it feels like to push off the toe, maybe sink back into the heels. Get in preparation for our downward dog. The tabletop. Inhale the left leg back. Connect the balls of the feet with the ground. Wake up that calf, wake up that hamstring. Push off the toe, sink the heel back. And play around with what that feels like. Exhale back into tabletop. So turn your toes under. We're going to gently walk the palms forward. Take one step back with your knees as you let your elbows fall towards the ground. Open the top of the chest towards the ground into a puppy pose. Tailbone is towards the ceiling. Now, if that is too much of a shoulder opener, you can just gently kind of pulse in and out of it. Remember to breathe. Flip the toes under. Gently start opening up the chest, pushing through your palms. And we're going to go into our first downward facing dog. Go ahead and walk your dog. You don't have to straighten out right away. Go ahead, drop the knees and go back into your tabletop. We're going to go ahead and do that again, but we'll take a breath. Flip the toes, gently bring your chest towards the tops of your legs. Push through your palms, push through the balls of your feet back into your downward facing dog. And we're going to gently walk the feet forward, moving to our fingertips when we need, into your first forward fold, bending your knees as much or as little as you like.
You don't have to bend the knees, guys, so if you want.
Exactly. Listen to your body, maybe grabbing onto the elbows, letting your head and your neck hang limp, maybe gently pulsing back and forth. Take a breath. Now heel toe your feet together. Do a gentle bend as you inhale your arms up. Maybe take a slight back bend if that's in your practice. Exhale through heart center back into your forward bend. Knees bent if needed, and you know you do not have to touch the ground. Gently bend the knees. Inhale the arms up, stretching towards the sky. Exhale through your heart center. Hands make contact with the ground. Step your left or right leg back, left leg back. And then gently bring your knees back to the floor, back into your tabletop. So now we'll go back to our Sukhasana. Thank your body for the practice that it's done.
Let's suppose that you were able every night. to dream
Soften
any
your
dream
gaze.
And you
Mindful of
would
your breath.
naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure. And after several nights, you would say, well, that's pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which is something. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it is. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further out gambles as to what you would dream. Finally, you would dream where you are now. If you awaken from this illusion, you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death. You can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on the table, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. What you are basing, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself.
Great. Slowly bring awareness back to your body. We'll take our hands to our heart center. Take one last deep breath in. Filling up our lungs completely. Take a little sip more. And sigh it out. The light in me sees and honors the light in all of you. Namaste. No problem.
All right, that's our class.
That's the perfect way to end a class.
All right, does anybody need any help online? Everybody good to go? All right, we'll see you next week.